So first of all, what is anaerobic respiration? As the name suggests, so that respiration is actually going to occur in the absence of oxygen. So if you compare with the entire things in case of oxygen, in case of aerobic respiration, what you see that in case of aerobic respiration, what happens that the final electron acceptor is always oxygen, right? We have seen now that in case of aerobic respiration, what happens? It is the oxygen in the electron transport system which eventually receives the oxygen, right? That is the final electron acceptor. But in case of anaerobic respiration, what happens? That the electron acceptors can be anything other than oxygen, not oxygen, right? So in anaerobe, what happens? That there is a less oxidizing substance such as sulfate, nitrate, sulfur, or fumarate. They can be used for accepting the electrons. So mind it, technically what we say, that anaerobic respiration is such a respiration that is going to occur in the absence of oxygen. But if we analyze the things on a wider perspective or on the scale of metabolism, then what we can say that it is about the acceptance of electrons by which intermediate. If the acceptance of electron is eventually going to happen by oxygen, it is aerobic respiration. If it is another than oxygen, we call it as an anaerobic respiration. In case of anaerobic respiration, in place of oxygen, we have a sulfate, nitrate, sulfur, fumarate, and so on. So this is what we call anaerobic respiration. Okay. So one thing is very clear that in case of anaerobic respiration, what we see, that amount of energy release is very less in compared to the aerobic respiration, right? So just note it. So once done, let me know. Done. Shall I move? तन्मय, स्वरूप, सरस्वती, आगे बढ़ूं क्या? ओके। तो देखो, एनारोबिक रेस्पिरेशन में हम लोग फर्मेंटेशन के बारे में जानते हैं। तो फर्मेंटेशन क्या है? दैट इज अ फॉर्म ऑफ एनारोबिक रेस्पिरेशन, राइट? और फर्मेंटेशन में क्या होता है? एटीपी तो जनरेट होता है, बट दैट इज अ सबस्ट्रेट लेवल एटीपी फॉर्मेशन। जैसे आप एरोबिक रेस्पिरेशन में देखते हो तो क्या होता है? वो सबस्ट्रेट लेवल नहीं होता है, वो क्या होता है? वो हम लोग कीमो ऑस्मोटिक हाइपोथेसिस में देखते हैं, एटीपी का वहां पे फॉस्फोरिलेशन होता है, यानी ऑक्सीडेटिव फॉस्फोरिलेशन। बट यहाँ पे जो एटीपी फॉर्म होती है वो सबस्ट्रेट लेवल फॉर्मेशन। ओके। इलेक्ट्रॉन एक्सेप्टर एनएडी इज रीजनरेटेड फ्रॉम एनएडीएच, राइट? ओके। क्योंकि ग्लाइकोलाइसिस में आप क्या देखते हो, जब ग्लाइकोलाइसिस होती है तो एनएडीएच तो बनता है, लेकिन फर्मेंटेशन में इस एनएडीएच का कंजम्पशन हो जाता है, तो वापस से एनएडी एक्सेप्टर्स यहाँ पे रीजनरेट हो जाती है। ओके। सो आप इस पाथवे में देखो, ये ग्लूकोज है। ग्लूकोज से ग्लाइकोलाइसिस तो कॉमन है, ग्लाइकोलाइसिस तो होगी ही, तो ग्लाइकोलाइसिस में हमें पायरुविक पायरुविक एसिड बनता है। और पायरुविक एसिड के बाद दो तरह का फर्मेंटेशन देखते हैं हम लोग, अल्कोहलिक एसिड फर्मेंटेशन या लैक्टिक एसिड फर्मेंटेशन देखते हैं। दोनों ही फर्मेंटेशन में हम लोग क्या देखेंगे कि अल्टीमेटली दो एटीपी का फॉर्मेशन जरूर हो जाएगा, लेकिन यहाँ पे जो एनएडीपीएच बना था, राइट, वो एनएडीपीएच यहाँ पे कंज्यूम भी हो जाता है, जो कि आगे के इवेंट्स में हम लोग सीखेंगे, राइट? सो जस्ट राइट डाउन अबाउट द फर्मेंटेशन। रुतिका, एनारोबिक रेस्पिरेशन में क्रेव साइकिल या इलेक्ट्रॉन ट्रांसपोर्ट सिस्टम नहीं होते हैं, राइट? सो यहाँ पे केवल और केवल क्या होगा? देयर इज ओनली ग्लाइकोलाइटिक पाथवे। सो ग्लाइकोलाइटिक पाथवे इज गोइंग टू अकर, राइट? Shall I move? Okay. So what happens? Fermentation is going to use an indigenous organic electron acceptor. Okay. So widely used indigenous electron acceptor कौन सा? पायरुवेट। ओके, क्योंकि रेस्पिरेशन के अंदर में इलेक्ट्रॉन्स का एक्सेप्टेंस होता है, ये हमें मालूम है ना? और यहाँ पे यूजुअली हम लोग वहां पे एक टर्मिनल ऑक्सीडेटिव में हम लोगों ने टर्मिनल ऑक्सीडेशन के रूप में देखा था, बट यहाँ पे क्या हम देखते हैं? इट इज अ पायरुवेट दैट इज इवेंचुअली गोइंग टू एक्सेप्ट द इलेक्ट्रॉन्स, राइट? नाउ During the course of action, pyruvate is going to metabolize to various compounds, right? So there are two most important one what we call alcoholic fermentation, and second what we call lactic acid fermentation. So these are the only two types of well popular fermentation. We will discuss about that. So write on these. And another piece of information is that science of fermentation is always known as zymology. So yes, take a note of this also. Once done, let me know. So Ansika, Tanmay, Saraswati, shall I move? Okay. So first of all, we will talk about alcoholic fermentation. So what is the alcoholic fermentation? That is the conversion of pyruvate into ethanol or ethyl alcohol, right? So have a look at this. So glucose, you know very well, by glycolysis, it is being converted into pyruvate. Now pyruvate gets converted into acetaldehyde, right? And acetaldehyde gets converted into ethanol. But during the conversion of acetaldehyde into ethanol, what happens? NADH that was formed during glycolysis, that again gets converted into NAD. So net only 2 ATP is formed. That is the gain what we see over here. Okay. So here what we see, first of all, pyruvate is decarboxylated, right? In the presence of enzyme, what we call pyruvate decarboxylase. Now acetaldehyde is converted into alcohol in the presence of enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, right? So these are two groups of enzyme that is actually helping in the entire process. First, pyruvate decarboxylase, and second, alcohol dehydrogenase. And I told you that the net gain is only to 2 ATP. That the 2 ATP that we know very well, that is being formed during the glycolysis only. Okay, note it. Okay, so let's discuss another one, and that is the lactic acid fermentation, right? So there is another piece of information that the gymase is an enzyme complex. So if I say gymase, that includes both the pyruvate decarboxylase as well as the alcohol dehydrogenase, right? That catalyze the fermentation of sugar into alcohol. So gymase naturally occur in yeast. Okay. And one more thing, important thing is that in case of alcohol dehydrogenase, right? One of the element that is present over here is zinc. That is also sometimes I have seen the questions that which element is actually is a core of the alcohol dehydrogenase, that is the zinc. Okay. So please write on this also about gymase. So gymase is a combination of these two, pyruvate decarboxylase and alcohol dehydrogenase. So let's move ahead. So in the next, as I told you, we will be speaking about lactic acid fermentation. Okay. So you see, lactic acid fermentation refers to two ways by which lactic acid can be produced, what we call heterolytic and homolytic. So in case of heterolytic, what happens? There is a production of lactic acid as well as the other acids. Okay. But in case of homolytic, what happens? There is exclusively production of only lactic acid, right? And in case of homolytic, what happens? This is being catalyzed by enzyme what we call lactate dehydrogenase. Okay. So here you see that glucose getting converted into pyruvate and pyruvate directly getting converted into lactate. Here also you see that NADH2 is being utilized forming NAD. So the net gain of ATP is only 2, right? But the enzyme what we call it is the lactate dehydrogenase. Okay. So the important thing what you need to keep in mind, there is a no release of CO2. In the previous case, there was a decarboxylation because you know that ethyl alcohol is a 2-carbon compound, right? But lactic acid is a 3-carbon compound. So that's why there is no decarboxylation. Pyruvate being directly converted into lactate. Okay. Take a note of it. Over. So have a look at the fermentation products and mind it, in competitive exams, this is the area from where the questions are actually asked, right? So you see the name of organism and what are the fermentation product. That is the important thing what you need to keep in mind. So the pathway is common from glucose to pyruvic acid, and the pyruvic acid directly participate in the formation of these products with the help of different uh, organisms. For instance, in case of Swiss cheese, the propionic acid is actually being formed, and the name of the organism what we call Propionibacterium, right? In case of lactic acid, it is Aspergillus, Lactobacillus, and Streptococcus. In case of beer or wine, it is the Saccharomyces. In case of acetone and isopropanol, that is primarily being used in nail polish remover, rubbing alcohol, and so on, that is Clostridium. And E. coli in case of acetic acid, that is used for preparation of vinegar. So just write down the name of the species as well as the products that is being formed. Okay. So everybody done? Okay, so this is all what I have to discuss as far as entire anaerobic respiration is concerned. We don't have to discuss anything more, right? So before I conclude about this entire respiration chapter, I would like to discuss one more pathway, right? And the name of that pathway is what we call PPP. Have you heard about it? नाम सुना है क्या? Do you know anything about it? PPP, pentose phosphate pathway. So let's discuss very briefly about what exactly is the PPP, right? So the first thing is that it is an alternative pathway for energy generation. Okay. For energy generation. Now, why it is alternative? Because you see, whenever the cell is in the process of development, right, then what happens that mitochondria is not developed. If mitochondria is not developed naturally, the energy cannot be produced. So during that brief period where the mitochondria is yet to develop, cell need a alternative pathway, and it is that period where the cell is getting energy through this particular pathway. Okay, so what we can say that provides energy when mitochondria is not developed. Okay. So here what happens from glucose, because in every pathway, the glucose being utilized, right? So glucose is actually getting converted into finally the intermediates, whatever were the intermediates in the form of CO2 plus H2O, that is the final intermediate, right? But in the process, what happens that NADPH2 is formed. Okay. And this NADPH2 is capable of forming the ATP. Of course, that ATP will form only when the mitochondria is actually being developed. Okay, so the very potential for this is the production of 35 ATP. So 1 molecule of glucose is going to give you 35 ATP, right? So that is the only thing I want. I don't want to go for the details of the pathway because that is beyond the scope of your syllabus. So conceptually, the two things you need to keep in mind: first, it is an alternative pathway. Second, it operates when the mitochondria is yet to develop. And third, from 1 molecule of glucose, 35 ATP is being formed. Actually, for 1 molecule of glucose, what happens? 12 NADPH2 is actually formed. So 12 give rise to 36 ATP, right? But there is a minus 1 ATP, because this minus 1 ATP, why? Because it is actually being consumed. So in the entire process, 1 ATP be consumed. So net gain is actually 35 ATP. So that is the only thing what you need to keep in mind, right? So please note it. Everybody noted? Right. So this is all as far as entire respiration is concerned, right? So now in the next, today we will introduce another chapter, and that is the plant growth. Okay. So this is the last chapter in the entire plant physiology. And this is also a very prominent chapter from the examination perspective. So first of all, let's try to understand what is plant growth. Okay. So you know very well, growth is what? That is irreversible changes, right? And that changes can be visualized in terms of the increase in dry weight, size, mass, volume, right? So in most of the cases, it is going to be quantified in terms of accumulated biomass. So growth is always uh, defined or visualized in terms of the accumulation of biomass over the period of time. Okay. So we can see that the seed germination is the first step of the plant growth, because from seed, when it germinates, so naturally during the course of germination, there is accumulation of the biomass, right? So if the suspension of the growth is due to exogenously controlled factor, then what we call it is a quiescence. And when the suspension of growth is due to endogenously factor, we use the term dormancy. So these are two terms you need to understand: dormancy and quiescence. Okay. So suppose there is a seed and it is not germinating due to some internal factor. What are the possible internal factors? That the enzymes are not present in active state, and the seed coat is very tough, that is not allowing uh, to facilitate the very process of germination. This is what we call endogenously factor, and then we call it as a dormancy. But suppose if the internal factor is not there, but even then some external factor is required in terms of presence of moisture, then sufficient amount of oxygen and so on, right? And if it is not there, and if the germination is not going to occur due to some exogenously factor, then we call it as a quiescence. So we need to identify the difference between these two. The net result is same, the absence of germination or the suspension of the germination, right? But these two need to be identified. When environmental factors, it is a quiescence. When internal factor, we call it the dormancy. I hope it is absolutely clear. Understood? Please take a note of it. सब लोगों ने लिख लिया क्या? Shall I move? ओके, चलो बात करते हैं फेजेस ऑफ ग्रोथ के बारे में, राइट? सो टिपिकली ये सिग्मोइडल शेप हम लोग जानते हैं ग्रोथ के लिए, राइट? सो द थ्री फेज हैज बीन आइडेंटिफाइड. सो the rate of initially the rate of growth is slow and is termed as a lag phase. You can see in this graph. So this is a lag phase where the rate of growth is slow. The second phase is a rapid growth. This is what we call exponential phase, right? And finally, growth stops or becomes stationary, right? This is what we call a stationary phase or a steady phase. So these three phases, and we call S-shaped or sigmoidal growth. Okay. So note it, draw the graph as well. So सब लोगों ने लिख लिया? Let's move. तो देखो, यदि हम लोग लैग फेज के बारे में बात करें तो लैग फेज में हम लोग क्या देखेंगे? रेट ऑफ सेल डिवीजन इज मैक्सिमम. माइंड इट, रेट. So this is often asked. Name the period where rate of cell division is maximum. Okay. So lag phase is known for maximum cell division. In lag phase, what happens? P by R is always greater than 1. What is P? P is rate of photosynthesis. Okay. That is the rate of photosynthesis, and R is equal to rate of respiration. Right? So what you see, if P by R is greater than 1, then what will happen? There is accumulation of the biomass, and there is a slow accumulation of biomass we see. In a log phase, what happens? That there's a maximum cell elongation, right? Mind it, rate of cell division is maximum in lag phase and maximum cell elongation in case of log phase. And in log phase, what happens? P by R is much, much greater than 1 because there is a greater accumulation of biomass. Okay. In a stationary phase, we know there is a no accumulation of biomass or very less accumulation of biomass. So what we see, P by R is equal to 1, or it is a minutely is greater than 1. It is never less than 1. If I say P by R is less than 1, what it means? It means that biomass is actually decreasing. And that is going to occur only when any plants or any entire, what we can say, ecosystem is under the parasitic attack. Because if there is a parasitic attack, what will happen? There is a degradation of the biomass. In that case, what we see that P by R will be less than 1. Okay. So that will eventually leads to decrease in the biomass. So that is only going to occur when there is going to have some sort of parasitic attack. Otherwise, it is always greater than 1 or equal to 1. Understood? I hope it is clear to everybody. ये सभी लोगों ने समझा ना? Is it okay? So quickly take a note of it. Yeah, Rutika, absolutely correct. P by R is equal to 1. That is at the compensation point where there is a no gases exchange between plant and atmosphere. So there what we see that rate of photosynthesis is equal to rate of respiration. Shall I move? Okay. So let's talk about the factors that is going to affect growth, right? So there are many factors, but I have taken only these four, that is temperature, light, oxygen, carbon dioxide. So these are the four factors. So one by one, we will speak about these factors. But before that, can you tell me what is etiolation? Anybody who knows about it? What is etiolation? Any idea?
So the elongation of stem in the absence of sunlight.
Absolutely correct. Or instead of that, you use the word internodal elongation, right? So elongation of stem in the absence of sunlight, right? So basically, in place of stem, you can use the word internode. Elongation of stem or internode in the absence of sunlight is known as etiolation, and it occurs due to degradation of the chlorophyll, because we know very well that the biosynthesis of chlorophyll requires light. And if we keep plant in the dark, so naturally the photosynthesis will not happen, or the chlorophyll is not going to be synthesized. So in that case, there is an abnormal increase in the length of the stem or internode. That is what we call etiolation. So can you tell me that suppose there is a plant which is etiolated, right? And after etiolation, I kept this plant back to the sunlight. What will happen to the elongated stem? Any idea? जो स्टेम इलोंगेट हो गया था उसके अंदर क्या होगा? So options are whether the chlorophyll will be resynthesized, whether the plant will grow normally, or whether the plant, or whether that portion of the plant will die. What will happen? So all of you understood the question? मैंने जो क्वेश्चन बोला सबको समझा क्या? So still I'm waiting. Have you understood the question? I got an answer from Rutika. So she says portion of plant will die. Rutika, can you tell me why? Why the portion of plant will die? Yeah, that is the answer. She has also given the correct answer, because you see, the portion of the plant will die. The reason being, chlorophyll cannot be resynthesized, because once the synthetic process is being halted, right, from that particular area, the chlorophyll cannot be resynthesized. That is the reason that etiolated plants will not regain the normal plant shape. So that particular portion will die. So that is correct. Okay. So let's talk about that, how these factors are going to affect plant growth. Now, as far as the temperature is concerned, that is directly proportional to plant growth. Right? So instead of temperature, we should write optimum temperature. So optimum temperature will directly favors the plant growth, right? In case of light, if I ask you which light promotes growth, and your options are blue to red. So all the color of Vivgyor, right? So my question is, which light will promote the plant growth? What is the answer? Is it red light? Is it blue light? Straight questions. Okay. Rutika is saying blue. What about others? Ansika is also saying blue. Okay. Can you tell me why blue light is why blue light favors plant growth? What is the reason for that? Well, let me tell you that the correct answer is a blue. That blue light favors plant growth. But what is the reason behind that? No, Ritika, your explanation is not correct, because already we have seen that if you compare the blue and red light was the more efficient in comparison of photosynthesis. So it has nothing to do with the photosynthesis, because if I have to say photosynthesis, then I would have opted red, because in case of red, there is no loss of energy. But in case of blue, obviously there is a loss of energy. But in case of plant growth, the story is different. So in case of plant growth, the logic is that we need to see that which light is going to give more energy, right, or temperature. So given the blue and red, the blue is always going to give you more energy or more temperature. And right now we have seen that higher temperature means higher plant growth. So from that logic, we say blue light is blue light is the best light for plant growth. Okay, so please note, do not correlate the photosynthesis with the plant growth, because photosynthesis alone is not the only factor for the plant growth. There are a large number of other factors as well, right? So here we need to consider blue light, going to the fact that blue light not only contribute to the photosynthesis, but they also contribute towards having more energy in terms of temperature, which promote the plant growth or other metabolism, which eventually helps in the growth of the plant. So that's why please write down blue light is the best light for plant growth. Okay. And in which light the growth is least? ब्लू से लेके रेड के बीच में कौन सी ऐसी लाइट है जिसमें प्लांट ग्रोथ लीस्ट होगा? व्हाट इज द आंसर? So waiting for answer from everybody. Which color light is least contributing towards plant growth? No, red is not the correct answer. Well, the correct answer is green. Because green light is not at all absorbed. Green light is reflected back. Okay, so that's why the green light doesn't contribute anything towards the plant growth. Okay. So what we have learned, blue light is most efficient light and green light is the least efficient light, right? So these are two things as far as the temperature and light is concerned. What about oxygen? So again, the plant growth will be promoted up to 21% of the oxygen. Beyond 21%, what will happen? That the chances of the enzymes that is required for plant growth is going to be oxidized. So therefore, the growth will be tapered. So up till 21%, the plant growth is going to increase. What will happen in carbon dioxide? Again, if the carbon dioxide increases, photosynthesis increases, thereby it is going to contribute towards the plant. So greater amount of carbon dioxide, greater amount of plant growth only till 0.05. So that is correlated directly with the photosynthesis what we have earlier read. ठीक है ना? ये सभी लोगों ने समझा ना? Is it okay? Is it clear? Right. Now, how growth is measured? Now, you see, growth is measured by the most popular instrument, what we call oxynometer. Okay. Now, there is one more, what we call horizontal microscope, Bose craskograph, and a space maker disc. Okay. So these are the four most popular instruments for measuring plant growth. So the area of leaves being determined by space marker disc, right? Craskograph, where the plant growth is actually recorded in the graph paper, horizontal microscope, and oxynometer. So these are the instruments. Please write down the method for measuring the plant growth. लिख लिया क्या? Shall I move? Okay. Now let's talk about the growth regulators. You know, so we can divide growth regulators in promoter and inhibitors, right? So three, the most popular one, what we call auxin, cytokinin, gibberellin inhibitors, abscisic acid, and ethylene. So these are the five growth regulators that we need to study. So today we will do only one, and that is auxin. Okay. So let me go through the very first one, what we call auxin. Right. Let me tell you that what are the important thing what we need to study in any of the growth regulator. Okay. So there is a set thing what we need to study about the growth regulator. First, a little bit about the historical aspects. Okay. Second, their bioassay. Third, their biosynthesis, and fourth, their function. So these are the only four things what we need to study, right? As far as auxin is concerned, we know they induces cell elongations. Chemically, it is a indole 3 acetic acid or C10H9O2N. That was the first auxin isolated from the plant, right? So you can see there, so indole 3 acetic acid. Okay. Then indole acetic acid found in all plants and fungi. The main site of auxin synthesis are meristem and enlarging tissues. So it is going to also occur in the human urine, particularly for the person suffering from the disease called pellagra. Okay. So please note this regarding the basic information about auxin. Yeah, Ritika, I was just telling that four things you need to study in regulators. First, a little bit about the historical perspective. The second is bioassay. The third is biosynthesis, and fourth is the function, right? So these are the four things what we need to study. So first we have a little bit of introductions, right? Then we are talking about a little bit of historical perspective, that what was the initial experiment that is actually being done. So the first experiment, what we call Darwin experiment, that is very, very popular, right? So here what happens in this experiment, you can see that when a light is given to coloctile. Now what is coloctile? Coloctile is whenever any seed is going to germinate, right? And when the plumule comes out, so the initial structure, what we call it is a coloctile, right? So what Darwin did, they provide light to the coloptile, and to observe there is a lightward bending to the coloptile. You can see there, this is the coloptile bent towards the source of the light. Okay. But when this is cut, then what happens? There is no bending, right? And what he observed, that even if it is put on a sand, it is a sand, right? Even if the light is given, what will happen? It bends. Okay. So the experiment of Auxin was simply just to prove or just to show there is a lightward bending. So what happens? Darwin performed this experiment, and he said that there is some chemical that is present in the tip portion, and that is responsible for causing this event. But unfortunately, he was not been able to explain the exact nature of this chemical. So he simply mentioned this phenomena only, right? So lightward bending experiment, or we can say that is the only phenomena for the very first time towards the Auxin experiment it was observed. Okay. So have you understood this experiment? So once again, I would like to say that the conclusion was only one simple lightward bending of the coloptile. That's it. Understood? Okay. So have a look at the another experiment. So the another experiment was done by Boysen and Jensen, and they did experiment with a mica. Sometimes question is asked that who did experiment with a mica, right? It was a Boysen and Jensen. Now let's try to understand what he tried by doing this experiment. First of all, he put mica at the shaded portion, right? And he put a light. What he observed, there was no bending. So no bending when mica was put half at the shaded portion. Okay. But when he put mica at the illuminated area, then there is going to have a bending. Okay. Thirdly, he cut the coloptile and he extracted the substances on some agar plate. Okay. And when that agar plate was kept on another cut portion, then again it shows bending. Right. So this was the experiment that was performed by Boysen and Jensen. So what was the net conclusion of this experiment? The conclusion was that the growth substances must be present at the shaded portion. Why? Because if it is inhibited, or if it is stopped, then lightward bending is not going to happen. But on contrary, if it is going to happen in the lighted side, there is no effect. So that means that the growth substances must be at the darker end. Okay. Right. And when it was put in a, when the substances was extracted in a gelatin, in a block of gelatin, right? And when it is going to place, then again the growth is going to happen. Okay. So this substances proof, or this DNE experiment proof, that the growth substances is present at the tip portion. So these are the two observation from Boysen and Jensen. So questions are often asked that which scientist did experiment with mica and gelatin, that is Boysen and Jensen, and what was the conclusion? So you can write down the conclusion. The conclusion was the very first, that growth substance present at darker side, and number two, growth substances can be extracted from apical meristem in gelatin. So that was the two conclusion made by these. Okay. Please note it. Done. Okay. So have a look at the final one. And that was done by Wendt. Okay. So Wendt extracted, in the earlier case, it was extracted in gelatin, but he extracted in a agar block, right? And with the agar block, what he has seen that uh, when the tip of the collar was cut off, no oxygen was available. But from this tip, the oxygen can be extracted in the agar. When the agar is placed at the tip portion on the area or the half area, that area shows bending. Okay, you can see there that the tip of the collar it is placed over here half, then there is the bending is going to happen. Okay, so that was the thing as far as the oxygen vent experiment is concerned. The oxygen vent experiment is the most important one. In fact, Wendt has given the name oxygen. So the word oxygen was coined by F.W. Wendt on. Okay, so that is also often asked in competitive examinations, right? Ritika, you see this agar. What is agar? Agar is made up of red algae, right? So this agar block is used for extracting the chemical because the oxygen is present over there. So if I keep a tip portion over agar, the oxygen will come inside in the agar block. That is stored over there. And when we keep the same agar cube over there, then it shows growth. Okay. Done. Now have a look at biosynthesis. Now biosynthesis is required tryptophan. Tryptophan is amino acids, very well. That is the precursor for the biosynthesis of oxygen. Okay. And biosynthesis always requires zinc. So this is the only two things what you need to keep in mind, that biosynthesis require tryptophan as a precursor and it also requires zinc. So chemically it is indole 3 acetic acid. Write on these 3 points. Okay, so now we need to understand the bioassay. The bioassay is basically the test of oxygen, right? So these are three tests, what we call Avena curvature test, Avena section test, split P test. So we need not require to go into details about that, how actually tests being done. That is not required. The only thing is that you need to keep the name of the test, that these tests are for the oxygen, that is Avena curvature, Avena section, and split P test. However, I can show you over here. So how the Avena curvature test is actually being done. So first of all is a Avena collectile that is being cut, placed on the agar block, right? Now what happens? This oxygen will diffuse in the agar block. Okay. Now agar block is asymmetrically placed on the collectile, right? So that is going to occur bend. Okay. Now this curvature is actually being calculated. So depending upon this curvature, the activity more or less is actually being set, right? Understood, everybody? Shall I move? So now the last section, that is what we call the function of the oxygen. But before that, let's have a look at the distribution. So we know very well oxygen occur in two forms, free oxygen and bound oxygen. And the equilibrium is going to exist between these two. So the primarily the oxygen going to occur at the apical shoot meristem, right? And wherever the oxygen is synthesized, being it's a hormone, it is not being used over there. It is used at somewhere else, right? So oxygen synthesized in shoot meristem is going to be utilized at some other places. Similarly, what we see that the very movement of oxygen is always polar. That is natural oxygen. But as far as artificial oxygen is concerned, their movement is bipolar. Okay. So that is another important point what you need to keep in mind. Polar transport using proton pump. That means an active process. That is movement of oxygen is an active process, right? But in contrary, synthetic oxygen always show non-polar transport. So they can move upward as well as the downward, right? Please note it. Over. Now, one more thing I would like to discuss with you, that is the light-induced destruction of oxygen at a illuminated site. What exactly it is? You see, we have seen this event that suppose this is a collectite, and if I give a light, right, then what happens? There is a bending. There is a bending of collectile happening, right? Now, why bending happening? Because see, initially the amount of oxygen is almost equally distributed over here in the entire portion. Because the moment light fall on it, okay, then what happens? At the lighter side, there is a destruction of the oxygen. Okay, so oxygen is present only at the darker end. Okay, at this end, there is a destruction of oxygen. Okay, so since the oxygen is present at the darker end, so that's why it promotes growth only at this end, not at this. So that's why it is happening. It results into bending of towards the light. So this is what we call light-induced destruction of oxygen at illuminated site. Understood, everybody? So please note the last point as well, light-induced destruction of oxygen at illuminated site. Chalo, so one final thing, and that is function. Right? The first function is cell enlargement. That is the most important function of oxygen. Now, how the cell enlargement happens, have a look at this. First of all, indole acetic acid bind to the receptors. Okay, that is oxygen binding protein present on the cells. So these are the receptors, right? Suppose this is a cell wall, and the oxygen bind to the receptors. So once they bind to the receptors, then cell begins to transport protons to the cell wall. So this, once it binds, then this area become leaky, and the cell start transporting the proton to the cell wall. So the moment proton is transported to the cell wall, the proton breaks bond of cellulose microfibril, and they activate enzyme that is going to weaken the bond, and the cell wall become weaker. Now this is followed by the protoplast going under the turgor pressure, okay, and they stretch the weakened cell wall and growth happens. So once it happens, then what happens? That again it regain the normal position by just withdrawing itself from the receptors. So thereby the cell enlargement is going to happen. So in the nutshell, what we see, the cell enlargement is going to happening due to weakening of the cell wall, followed by the turgor in stretching, eventually leading to growth. Understood? ये सब लोगों ने समझा ना? Is it clear? So please note down this pathway of the cell enlargement. लिख लिया? ओके, चलो एक और चीज देखते हैं, एपिकल डोमिनेंस। ये भी ऑक्सिन शो करता है। एपिकल डोमिनेंस का मतलब क्या है? If the apical bud is there, it will not allow the growth of the lateral bud. This is what we call apical bud, apical dominance. Okay. And why it is going to happen? It is going to happen because you see, when the apical bud is there, it attracts all auxin towards itself. So the lateral buds are actually deprived of the auxin. So that's why the growth is not going to happen over there. Okay. So what we call HDT, or hormonal directed transport of auxin towards the apical bud. Now, how it can be overcome? It can be overcome by cutting the apical bud. Right? So apical dominance can be broken by cutting the apical bud. Okay. Or it can also be overcome by spraying the auxin cytokine at the lateral bud. Because basically the inhibition is due to the absence of auxin or cytokinin. So if I spray auxin or cytokinin, then it will also grow. Okay. So that is the way in which the apical dominance can be broken. Okay. So write on this, the apical dominance. Done. Now, what we call tropic movement. So there is one more theory given for the tropic movement, what we call Cholodny-Vent theory. So that theory explains the phototropic and geotropic movement. You know, tropic movements are a directional movement. If I say directional movement, what does it mean? It means that movement is going to occur in the direction of the stimulus. That's why we call direction movements, right? So tropic movement in root and shoot is going to occur due to unequal distribution of the auxin, right? And that unequal distribution primarily occur in response to the gravity. Okay, have a look at this diagram. You see, so due to gravity, what will happen? You see greater accumulation of auxin at the lower end, right? Now, very interestingly, you see the higher auxin in the root actually suppresses growth. Thereby, it leads to downward bending. So higher auxin in radicals suppresses growth, resulting into downward bending, known as geotropic movement. But just reverse is going to occur in case of the plumule, right? Here, higher growth, here higher concentration leads to more growth, resulting into upward bending. So higher auxin in plumule promotes growth, resulting into upward bending, leading to phototropic movement. So that is very important. So please keep this fact in mind, that higher concentration of auxin in radical suppress growth, but higher concentration of auxin in plumule promotes growth. That is important, and that is the reason behind the phototropic and geotropic movement. Understood? Is it clear? Please note it. Once done, let me know. Over. Okay. So finally, NAA, that is naphthalene acetic acid and indole butyric acid. Please remember these two names. NAA and NIB are used as a routing hormone because you see, these are commercially utilized to induce roots in plants, right? That's why we call NAA and IBA as a rooting hormone. Now 2,4-D, often the full form 2,4-D is asked. 2,4-D is a dichlorophenoxyacetic acid. D stand for dichlorophenoxyacetic acid and T stand for trichlorophenoxyacetic acid. They are used as a VD site. So 2,4-D and 2,4-T, 2,4,5-T, right? They are used as a VD site. They induce parthenocopy. Parthenocopy, that means seedless fruit. But mind it, all three, ethylene, gibberellic acid, and auxin, all three have a potential to induce parthenocopy. But their potential is in this sequence. Ethylene is more, then GA is more, than auxin. So these are commercially utilized for inducing parthenocopy. Okay. And they have a feminizing effect. So you see, auxin is often called as a female hormone and gibberellin is called as a male hormone. So this is often asked, which is male hormone, which is female hormone. So auxin is actually called as a female hormone. They also promote seasonal activity of the cambium, right? And they delay abscisic layer formation. So thereby they are antagonistic to function to ABA because, you know, abscisic acid promotes the formation of abscission layer, but they counteract the working of ABA. So thereby they delay the abscission layer formations. Okay. So these are the things as far as auxin functions is concerned. Please note it. चलो सबको noted everybody? सब लोगों ने लिख लिया? So lots of crackers are going on. चलो आज का क्लास यहीं पे ख़त्म करते हैं और नॉर्मली मैं डेली टेस्ट लेता हूँ बट आज टेस्ट नहीं कर रखते हैं. सो वंस आई विल फिनिश ऑल दी 4 हार्मोन्स देन आई विल पुटिंग द टेस्ट. ओके. And one more thing, you see, on Sunday, I will not be conducting a session. So I want to conduct a session tomorrow. So all of you are comfortable for tomorrow sessions at 11 a.m. Is it okay for all of you? Okay. So Swaroop, Tanmay, Saraswati, Rutika, right? So we will be starting class 12 track from tomorrow. Right, so altogether there will be 4 days bio classes, right? So let me tell you, that is on Sunday and Tuesday there is a class 12, and Monday and Friday that is a class 11. So whatever we have left today, so we will be talking about this on Monday. So on Monday we will be talking about the plant physiology. From tomorrow I will be starting a new topic of the class 12, and that is from evolution. That's a very interesting. So we will be starting the topic of evolution tomorrow at 11 a.m. So normally this class will happen on Sunday, but since Sunday I'm not available, so that's why I'm conducting tomorrow. Okay. चलो फिर मिलते हैं कल 11 बजे evolution के topic के साथ, right? Anybody want to ask any question? Anybody? चलो, मेरा सबको स्ट्रॉन्ग सजेशन ये है, कल आप क्लास में मेरे आओगे तो एनसीईआरटी से एवोल्यूशन पूरा चैप्टर, फर्स्ट चैप्टर एवोल्यूशन का, ये पूरा पढ़ के आओगे. ओके. सो जस्ट गो थ्रू द इन एनसीईआरटी टेक्स्ट बुक, इन विच in the very first paragraph you will see the concept of the Big Bang theory, the chemical evolution, right? The concept of Haldane and Oparin. Okay, so that we will be discussing in tomorrow's class. Okay, chalo, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.